All right. Do you want to come in as a guest, as a host?
I'll probably be jumping in as a host.
You got your phones turned off, so they don't beep.
I have it on vibrate.
Yeah,
set it over there.
All right. Well, let's do this. Are we live on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, viewers, listeners, fellow athletes, those who we haven't met yet, welcome to One with Coach Blu. It's good to have you guys here today. Going to be doing some rearranging of some of our equipment here soon, moving platforms from the Zoom that we're currently experiencing and using now over to the Riverside FM, which is a much better platform. So when you see the links come through that have a little bit different, I guess, nameage and direction, just follow the prompts. It'll take you right to it. We'll be able to bring on live calls a lot more efficiently, I think.
Yeah, the sound's
better audio.
Going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And
for those of you guys have been listening to the Addict to Athlete podcast, we use that new platform for most of our podcasts, which is kind of a cool thing because we get so many good, I guess, like speakers and people to interview. And through Zoom, not so hot. Some of those recordings have been less than luster, huh?
Sorry for some of you listeners.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you give us feedback, we are trying to get better
Absolutely.
at all of this.
So I think Rob Rich, again, was one of those, I can never hear Blue, right? Or I can never hear Marissa.
No, it's me.
That's what it was.
You're always really loud and you cut me off.
And there's a difference between that platform and this. And it's possible because of our Patreon subscribers. You Patreon folks are making it possible for us to update some of the technology.
Get us some better equipment. Thank you
and
so
it's
much.
helped immensely. And so I want to give a special shout out and thanks to our super fans, Jerem Thurston, Holly Davies, Scott Foster and the Foster family, Coach Chris Williams, Brett Frew, Coach Tara Butson, and the Warrior Within podcast and personal development by Sensei KP.
We have a new Patreon too, who is a super fan. Steve Riggs, super fan. Steve welcome,
Riggs.
Steve. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So I just got off the phone with KP a little while ago. He's doing some coaching with Coach Blu about.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was actually really good too, and got me thinking about some. You know, when you're a therapist, you never think, oh, who can help the healer, right? Who heals the healer? KP does.
Really?
Yeah, it was great.
Good session.
It was a good session. Yeah, I learned a lot.
Thank you, KP. He has a lot to work on.
As he knows, he kind of laughed a few times. Our rookie level subscribers, thank you so much, Kenny Roseman, Earl Dyer, and Joe Jackson. Our pro levels, thank you so much, Selena Armitage, Gary Thurston, and Josh Hansen.
Thank you guys
so much. And our championship level subscribers, Chad and Freya Robinson, the Robinson family, Ron and Dee Loesch, Tracy Whitby. Thank you all so much for your contributions and helping out Team Addict to Athlete. Man, it's mind-boggling, like what we're able to do.
And Ron and Dee, I hope you guys got your Patreon stuff. Let us know if you like it.
Pictures in that gear.
Yeah, we'd love to see.
It really is. It helps a lot. We just posted a new Patreon episode yesterday.
Yes,
it was a good one.
Yeah,
talking
I hope
about
people got on and watched
not cluttering up your mind.
How to declutter your life.
It's a good one. Yeah, I liked it a lot. You got me thinking about some stuff I hadn't thought about in a long time.
And all of you that don't know, you can become a patron for only $2 a month and get all of the bonus episodes. And you can go back and listen to all the old ones too.
Yeah. And, the cool part about this Patreon and those who haven't yet been able to sign up, it helps Addict to Athlete move our message forward as we've got some situations and some sites that we'd like to tackle. You're helping it become possible. So I really appreciate all of you guys contributing, and joining the Patreon is a great way to do that because then you get something back. I like that.
Yeah.
Donations are fantastic, but I also love the fact that we give you something back. So jump on patreon.com/addicttoathlete and pick a tier that works for you. Got some great stuff on the horizon for the Patreon subscribers.
Yes. Thank you guys so much.
All right, Marissa, I've got a few questions here. But before we dive too deep into, I guess, some of the listeners' questions, you and I have discovered something very,
eye-opening,
very eye-opening and very sad.
Yes.
And it's made me extremely angry.
It's been going for a while
with what's been happening. And this came to light during COVID, during the pandemic, specifically early on and throughout. And that is, the wine culture beginning to normalize alcoholic mothers, targeting mothers specifically.
Yep. Mom wine culture.
Mom wine culture. You were reading a post through a Facebook group specifically on recovery, sobriety.
Yep.
And
it's a sober mom group. And
the individual posting had purchased some online shopping, some clothing from a children's store. It was Carter's. In the box was a certificate for free alcohol.
Yeah. $100 gift certificate for free wine when you become a mom.
No,
Isn't that a bonus?
I mean, I get why Carter's wants to do things like that because of, maybe some relationship building through marketing. But that is ridiculous. What a horrible way to promote and to market, to target mothers who are buying clothing for their kids about, hey, while you're buying new clothes, why don't you drink it away too? All the stresses of being a mom, all the attributes of being a mother. How about, you reward yourself through checking out?
That's how COVID pushed it too. Oh no, now you're a teacher and you're a mom and you're an employee. Well, you can't get through all of that unless you start drinking, because that's just too much work.
To me, that is the most bizarre way to like promote your business. And I get why you're doing it. The wine industry needs to make money. I get that. But what a horrible way to do this. So it's interesting because I got some terms here. Okay. Although that that wine culture, right? Normalizing alcoholic moms, it's kind of a relatively new term. That wine mom culture refers to a growing number of what's called wine moms, right? And encourages in drinking to escape the daily stresses of what parenthood would be. Early signs of mom culture started to kind of register on the scene, social media, about 2009. With the formulation of several online groups that grew quickly to 713,000 members who called their group Moms Who Need Wine. And it grew to that throughout the pandemic. But their mothers can share stories or articles or memes about how to raise children and how difficult it can be, and the requirements that wine plays in their lives. And I've seen throughout the pandemic this get to a point where it's gotten really bad.
Yeah. Well, now I can't even go to like Target and I'm like, oh, let me find a t-shirt. And I can tell you there's like 10 graphic tees and probably half of them have references to drinking.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because someone that doesn't understand or have a history of addiction wouldn't register that really on the radar. But more and more, it's becoming not so much as a pastime or as an exception, or like as an experience, so much as a culture. And that's, I think, where we're going to start running into some problems.
Well, and when we had Carrie Bates on our podcast just a few weeks ago, she works for Hazelden Betty Ford, and she's talked about how much they've increased in alcohol and women coming into treatment and needing treatment due to alcohol abuse severely during COVID, because it was also just pushed and people that maybe have never struggled with alcoholism as a addiction type thing, it became an addiction in the last year.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the interesting thing about this too is that there are also now hundreds of hashtags that are associated with that mom wine culture, right? Instagram includes like hashtag wine mom with, averaging, 58,000 posts, mamas who need a drink, 45,000 posts, mommy juice, 30,000 posts. It's crazy. And I get the humor in it, but then there becomes that part where, even there's been celebrities that have come out, I know people have strong feelings against Gwyneth Paltrow, but she came out and talked a lot about how even her drinking got extreme during the pandemic. Yeah. And it was one of these things where, well, all right, so then what's the case? They're placating to what women already feel as though they're like inefficient at. Yeah. So you look at the reasons why, right? Well, they promote instant gratification, stress relief. Is that really a long-term fix, right? Yeah. Lack of support, right? If alcoholic mothers can't find a babysitter or an affordable daycare when needed, they'll probably lean to that drink, right? To cope with the stress. Not enough time. Moms may not be able to have enough time for their own self-care, and so they look forward to that, escape. Yep. which is a big one. You and I have talked about that when we had young kids, and my escape was riding the bike, and I just kind of left you to do your own thing and not realizing the significance of what that
I still
meant.
need to have my own way of having self-care and having that time. And there's a lot of moms that don't, or there's a lot of single moms out there. And so, I can take care of myself by having a glass of wine at the end of the day, or, and this is my reward for making it through another day, rather than, there's other ways to reward ourselves that are healthier.
Yeah, it's a big one. And it's kind of one of those funny little cliches about the joke that it's associated with it, but it can turn into a serious problem. I think here in Utah, where we kind of hail from, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a rebellion. And I've noticed that it's not so much as a just kind of as a casual thing, but it becomes a rebellion. Drinking is almost an exciting experience for many people. And then, once you reach motherhood, and take on more responsibility, it leaves less time to be spontaneous. And so people use it kind of as that rebellion of not just against, beliefs or what have you, but also just kind of as a culture that's been established, in their own life. And so it's kind of like that, that little bit of living on the edge, being the rebel with the cause, so to speak. Right. And then the problem of mental health issues with mothers who suffer from depression or anxiety or have a high risk of becoming alcoholics. They may drink wine to self-medicate to temporarily ease some of that emotional pain or turbulence they're going through.
Yeah.
So when you and I caught up with this and heard that in a package being sent with children's clothes, there was that little certificate for $100, which is a lot of money.
Yeah, it was $100.
$100,
that's a lot of wine.
That's a lot of wine. It makes me kind of angry, and I'm thinking, to most people it would be kind of a fleeting thought, but for this person who struggles with addiction, it was a low blow.
Absolutely.
So do we become more tolerant with it? Do we just say, hey, okay, sarah, or do we look at it for what it is? And if so, we don't want to be the prude who points the fingers at every person, because there are people out there that can do this and do it socially and be fine. But I do think it's a low blow for a lot of different reasons. What are your thoughts?
I find it really sad on just those companies that's, to me, it's just lazy marketing, and obviously they want to be lazy and find the quick dollar. But I don't know.
I've worked with several moms.
They don't seem to have a lot of ethics and values, I guess.
I've worked with several moms that have been in this situation where they've had to escape through alcohol for marriages that were dysfunctional, emotionally abusive, through feelings of inadequacy and those things, right? And much like what Carrie was talking about too, right? It's just that once a week becomes twice a week, and it's a slow progression. And so you don't realize until you're in the middle of it that it's overwhelming and all consuming. But then the things at that point that you lose are far more valuable, right? And
quality time with your children, really being attentive and aware. People think, oh yeah, just whatever, but your kids know. Your kids notice when you're just checked out. And I'm not just saying by alcohol, but let's talk about our telephones and social media, that we're just checked out and that's all we focus on. Then, and not that you have to be fully and completely aware of your children. And yes, I see you, I watch you all the time, every day. But how do you build those relationships with your kids? How do you, bond with them if you are emotionally checked out,
or physically
or mentally checked out?
Well, it's like we've talked about in the past. You and I have talked about this, and Savannah's talked about it on her podcast, where when they are children, when they need the most attention, it's always a look at me kind of thing, right? Hey, Dad, watch this. And our kids will still do it. They're on the trampoline. Hey, Dad, check this out. And if I'm preoccupied or distracted and I'm not looking, and they keep asking, pretty soon they're going to stop.
Asking.
Then what happens when they get older?
Well, when they have bigger things to talk to you about that are more important, they may not want to come to you because you're busy. You're
Because
checked out. They've learned that you're not going to
Cats in
listen.
the Cradle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that song's on the game the boys play, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that song gets me sick every time. But it is.
Yeah.
It's like, sorry, I don't have time. So when they have something important,
Yeah.
they know that you're already checked out, and then you're not going to have the emotional stability. I mean, that's what's happened to my own family. I know that from a long time ago, they're all checked out. And so the stuff I really needed to get out could never fall on ears that were receptive.
Yeah.
And so although it's a funny shirt, it's a funny meme, the magnitude of what you're getting yourself into is significant. And I don't think people realize that. They think that there's always going to be a tomorrow, but those tomorrows lead into weeks and into months and into years, and it goes by fast.
And as you think it's not a big deal that I'm just tired today and I just need to relax today and I'll listen to my kid tomorrow, you do it too many times. That's what the kid remembers. They don't always really remember the time you did watch and give them praise.
Not at all.
But that negativity in our brains, we always fault to the negative. So even if you are a very attentive parent, 8 out of 10 days, the 2 days that you aren't, that's when your child remembers.
Absolutely.
And you being a parent, you always say you have to parent out of your inconvenience. You chose to be a parent and it's hard.
Yeah.
And so,
So then in that mindset then, because I think it's interesting, in that mindset, what do you think is the real cause? Do you think it's kind of an imbalanced parenting style where they feel like maybe they're doing, and maybe they are doing a majority of the emotional raising of the family, and it's the husband or the father who's the quote unquote breadwinner who has his preoccupations with other distractions?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, this is a general rule and consensus of addiction and substance use, is lack of coping skills.
Right.
When people have emotions, stresses, whatever, and they are led to a substance to handle and cope, that's where society, that's where the person, that's where everything really struggles. We have to sit down and ask ourselves, we're going to have stresses. Life is hard.
I've noticed.
Yeah. I think that's what you guys talked about on Agents of Recovery, right? Like, is it harder to be sober or harder to be an addict? And life is just hard. And it's which kind of hard are you wanting to live?
Right.
Are you wanting to live in that hard? But the only way you do that is finding good, appropriate ways to cope, whether that's running, that's listening to music, that's, going out with some friends and having, going to a movie, it's drawing, it's painting, it's writing music, it's hiking. Like, there's a million things that we can do to put in our stress and our worry over substance use.
Well, it's interesting because the culture is so strong and it has such a grip now. There will be people that will hear this message and be, I'm going to say, offended to a certain degree that it's my life. And that's true. And it's not what we're saying, right? We're saying that if you're going to, it doesn't matter what it is, if you're going to invest in something else is going to have to be, I guess, less important.
Yes. And we've talked about this with professional athletes.
Yeah.
If you put everything into a sport, to be really the top of your game, you have to give up other things.
A lot.
You sacrifice,
Let's dive into that for a second too, because that's kind of a bridger here to a certain degree. And I think that, there's always those people that are chasing records or trying to become the best of the top of their game.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll say things like, well, I'm doing this, for the greater good, to raise money or awareness or funds.
Yeah. Or to prove to myself even that I can do it.
And so they'll go out and they'll do these amazing things, yet they don't realize the massive amount of time that they're losing.
Yeah. The extreme sport, you've got to lose tons of time to be able to train and work out for that. And in most cases, you usually have a job too. And once you become a professional athlete, that is your job, but that still takes more than 40 hours a week.
Yeah. I remember talking
if you want to be the best.
talking to family members, when Heath would talk about this and he would describe like his training and how much investment went into it and how difficult that was to be at that level, to be considered a professional athlete. And him saying how hard it was and the things that were missed because of the time constraints.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because I see it in our culture a lot. I've seen it in people here in our community that we know. I've seen it in people, across the country, where if they want to become the best of the best, they have to sacrifice things. And the thing that's funny is they usually mask it under the umbrella of it's for the greater good. And everyone says the family's on board. But guess what?
Are they really?
Are they really? They have to be, because it's your choice. They have no choice but to be on board.
Yeah.
But what about the simple things? What about the things that those kids need but can't? You dive into Lance Armstrong's story.
Yeah.
He talks about this a lot now. So much so that like he missed a ton of his children's upbringing.
Yeah. They're kind of grown now.
I asked Dean Karnazes this when we interviewed him.
Yes.
And he said that he brought his with him.
Yeah.
And that they always came first. And I thought that's actually very interesting.
And that I really like about Dean too is he chose to do something very extreme. It was 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days, correct? But that was it. He does other training, he does other things, but then he still is a father most of the time.
Yeah.
So this was a 50-day commitment and training before it. But there's people out there that do this 50-day and this 100-day, and then next year this extreme race, and then that extreme race. And it's just like bigger. And what is that starting to become?
You know, what's interesting about that is there's a friend that I know of that did this, and, it was kind of a funny thing. And as he would increase his desire to want to be better at the sport, it started with 5Ks and 10Ks, and it went to triathlons, sprint triathlons, which is, it's a fast triathlon. Then it went to like an Olympic triathlon, which is pretty big, right? But then it went to half Ironmans, and then Ironmans, and then it was, I want to break records doing Ironmans, and it was doing Ironmans every week, and then it was Ultraman. And I'm like, dude, what are you trying to prove? Like, what is this?
Well, and I think people do it.
To me, that seems like addiction. It's like it's like more, better, faster, stronger, more.
You're building that tolerance, and you can't get the high anymore. So what do you have to do?
Increase.
You have to increase.
And then it's like, that's just the action of the time spent. Then it's the money, right? It's that, I mean, each Ironman triathlon is about $1,000+ bucks to get to get in.
Yeah. Let alone to travel, the equipment.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'd love to know anybody out there that's done a triathlon, maybe 7 out there.
Yeah.
Like what's the average price of like a triathlon from registration to equipment to room, board, flight, all that stuff? I'd love to know what the price is.
Yeah.
Because then you're taking that from families, I guess, saving. So it's like, it kind of sucks. It's like only the rich and the elite can like do these things.
Yeah. Well, and it transfers over to workaholic parents that just want to, that's what they're searching for, whatever it is. Like each of us need to have a real sense of self-awareness of where is our balance, where are our priorities, and what is most important to us.
Yeah.
And something has to give at all points, but we need to each say, what is it that brings me passion and joy and fullness, happiness?
Yeah.
And if that's doing something like that and you lose your family in the process, okay, that's your choice, I guess. But
yeah, you
have to really find the balance somewhere.
Yeah, whether it's that kind of time suck, or if it's the mommy and the wine stuff, to each his own. But don't go into it with an understanding that it's just all about you. I mean, at this stage of the game, when we're parents, we have a responsibility. And like I said, parenting out of inconvenience. I remember feeling like, man, I'd love to just spend that many hours on a bike or that many hours running just to train and do all this stuff and having to go to work or go to school. Remember how much I miss going to school? And I'm like, I'd much rather just go run for a job and all this kind of stuff. But then I'm like, well, then what? Right? Like, well, then what? Because no matter what, you only have so much time on that pedestal.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Not to poop on anyone's pursuits or whatnot, but like, you don't realize the magnitude of what you're doing until years later when those relationships
sometimes you don't see what you're losing as you're doing it.
It's the same thing with drinking, alcoholism, substance use. You think that kids don't understand that, but how many athletes have we talked about that when they've gotten sober, their kids are so scared that they
Mhm.
stand outside of the bathroom when their parents go in.
Yeah.
You know, or they have this feeling of like, you know, inadequacy because they're just always in that frame of fear.
Or you
know?
think, I'm just playing around. I'm just using a little here and there. I'm young. I can do whatever I want. And then all of a sudden 10 years goes by, and then 15 years. And then you're like, yeah,
Cats in the Cradle.
each
That
of us
song,
need
man.
to, make an assessment about where we're at and what really is important and what's not. But we all have to sacrifice some.
Yeah.
And you decide.
Absolutely.
Each person.
It's a big one. I wanted to lead off with that. I know we went down kind of a rabbit hole, but it's one of these things where, the culture is going that way. And so it's going to be a heavy pendulum swing to get it back to another side where mothers start feeling confident in their creations of families without having to have that distraction. It made me mad.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that's ridiculous,
So frustrating.
I mean, that's one thing I think we have easy here in the state of Utah, which is interesting. I'm not sure about other states, but it's not as accessible, some of these things in Utah as it is in other states, right? I mean, in other states, you walk further to get a gallon of milk than you do to get a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. And if that's not like placed there for a very specific reason.
And some people hate that. And I think there's also, I've known a lot of people that in fact have moved to Utah trying to get sober because they've recognized that there's some safety measures in place for themselves, and it's kept them better to not be tempted so easily by the alcohol everywhere.
It's funny, huh? It's interesting.
You can always get what you want when you want it. But
yeah, it's all there. But I think it's interesting though. And so when someone's trying to make a change like this to get sober, I think, man, that's challenging.
Sad.
So, yeah.
So we have an online question here from Don. Remember our friend Don from Tennessee?
Yes.
This is Don. Any tips to help when bad dreams come back after a traumatic event that impacted your life? Also, to let you guys know, our moving day from Tennessee is June 2nd. So, yay,
congratulations, Don.
We're excited.
That's
you're
awesome.
Going to go back home. I think that's Colorado. Is that right?
I think so.
I believe so.
Yep. Gonna go back there.
That's a good move. But bad dreams from trauma.
Yep, bad dreams from trauma. Unresolved traumatic issues still there in the frontal lobe as the fight or flight response. And so when anniversaries or when these things start to pop back up, remember your brain's trying to cope with it the best way it knows how, and it will create stress to make you aware of it, right? And part of that is getting back into the world again and naming what that really is. And so one thing I like to do, I did this with one of my clients this week over Zoom, which is kind of interesting, doing some EMDR therapy and some training, some coaching really on how to process trauma.
Process that trauma.
Instead of going out and doing your walk or doing your run, it's wise to take those feelings and that dream and take it on your run and your walk with you, and really, give it a few things. The first thing is, what is this dream? What is this fear? What does it say about me? It says that I can't handle hard things. It says that I'm weak. All these things, right? And as you're walking and as you're kind of watching your feet back and forth, and as you're moving and you're getting that heart rate up, stay with it for a second. What does it say about me? What is it? I am weak. We'll use that one. And as you're going through it, you then ask yourself, what would I rather believe about myself? And that's kind of a hard one, because what's the opposite of I am weak? I'd rather believe that I am strong, right?
I'm capable.
I'm capable. And then you start walking with that. I am capable. I am strong. I'm observant. All these things, all these attributes.
Positive attributes.
Yeah. And then you stop for a minute and you take a deep breath and you kind of do like a little bit of a scan of figuring out, okay, why do I believe that? Yes or no? And if it's like no, then you keep going, right? Why don't I believe that?
Do you ask that question? Why don't I believe it? Or you just keep repeating the positive?
You can do both, really.
Okay.
And the neat thing about this is you'll start finding out the reasons why that trauma is being held in there. It's being held in there for a reason. Maybe it's fear of letting it go, right? She say it was a dream that's being reestablished because of someone that passed?
It just says bad dream after a traumatic event that
Okay.
impacted your life.
Yeah. The coolest part about that is in real time, you can see that you've survived that traumatic past. So whatever it was, you happened to have been stronger than it, or else you wouldn't be here. Does that make sense? And so that right there is the first indicator that you're stronger than whatever that trauma was, which is kind of a self-belief you've got to really kind of conceptualize, is that you have to be stronger than whatever that trauma was, or else you wouldn't be here anymore.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even be asking this question. And so even introducing a strength and an attribute such as that I'm stronger than I think I am, and moving with that, it can start putting your mind into places of processing that trauma that you wouldn't do normally. Because remember, when it's in the fight or flight response, you're constantly on the lookout for anything that's similar.
Yeah.
Whether it's sights, sounds, smells, environments, people, sounds, anything to remind you to be vigilant, to be on guard. That's why post-traumatic stress is so difficult.
To remind you of the event because it was so difficult. And so then everything does. And then when you're stressed and your stress is increased, your subconscious triggers some of those strong emotions with stress, which often can go back to a traumatic event.
Again,
right?
let's dive into what that trauma does to it, because it puts this false sense of fear into our minds that we can't overcome it, that we are weak. And again, I'm going to bring up our buddy we met over the weekend, Shadrach, who we're going to have on this podcast. And what he did with his experience of having had a very
So he was a pilot that was
crash.
in a really awful plane crash
last August.
Yeah, August.
Crashed with family on board. And the way that he describes this, and I highly recommend going back to Addict to Athletes live post.
It's on Facebook.
It was Saturday. And you can hear his story. We're going to get him on the podcast.
We'll get him on the podcast in a few weeks too.
But he describes, before the crash, he knew something was happening. He knew. He's like, none of this works well. Like plane crashes, people don't survive these things. And so he's got family on board. And can you imagine all of the scenarios?
That responsibility of worrying more about his passengers than himself.
When he crashed, it just so happened that there were people there to respond. And it was horrible. It hurt a lot of people. It hurt him. In fact, he was paralyzed.
He was paralyzed. Yeah.
And they took him to the hospital, and there he was now, having had this horrible experience, this traumatic experience, afraid of what could have happened, and fear and anxiety. And then to boot, that he has hurt himself to the point where he can't even walk. He can't move. Yeah. And through I think through some reality and some spirituality on his part.
Oh yeah.
And some deeper understanding of like, okay, now this is a challenge. Instead of being afraid of this challenge, I'm gonna tackle it. So maybe, and I remember him saying like he was already researching like wheelchair basketball. Yeah. And I'm like, this is like day 2 or 3 after his wreck. His mindset was like, this is scary and this is hard, but I'm not going to let this sink me. I think first and foremost, we have to maybe make that conscious effort, that decision that I'm not going to allow this.
Yeah. That positive mindset is huge in being able to move past trauma.
Oh yeah.
That yes, it was hard. It was difficult. We're not saying that leaving it in the past means that it doesn't matter, or it wasn't important, or it wasn't.
Oh, it's significant. It does matter deeply. Yeah.
Yes. But identifying that, I can get past this. I'm stronger than this incident.
Yeah. So much so that, he did bigger and stronger and better like recovery for his injuries. Yes. And 3 weeks later walked out.
Yeah. Walked out.
He walked out of that plane, right?
That learned optimism, right?
Of that hospital. He learned optimism. So then,
I love it.
To boot, not a year later, he shows up last Saturday, going to throw himself out of a plane, same size as the one that he crashed. And when I heard that, I'm like, dude, what? Yeah. And he's because he was nervous.
Oh, he was scared.
Yeah. And then I got in the plane, and so I knew how crazy and scary that plane ride up was. That plane was built in 1958.
Yeah.
Come on.
But his whole point of going skydiving Saturday was to erase and replace.
Yep.
Erase that traumatic event, his plane crash and losing the ability to walk and all of his rehab and surgeries he's had with conquering,
Conquering.
and I can do it again and replace it with this, facing that fear.
Yeah.
It was
You
an
go
incredible
back and listen
experience.
to this. You'll hear the quiver in his voice because he had emotional. He had just jumped out of the plane
when he talked. Yeah.
It was maybe 20 minutes after, and he sat there, and then he expressed what just happened. And I'm thinking, holy cow. So then there's me who's there scared to death of this. And then someone said, what are you really scared of? And so I'm like, well, what am I? And I did it too.
Yeah.
Scariest thing I've ever done. But it made me realize that we are stronger than we think we are. And if he can get on a plane and jump out of it and parachute down after having
like 8 months after wrecking, what
are we really afraid of? Right.
Yeah. And what is it that each of us need to do? We all don't need to jump out of a plane, but what's something that we can do to prove to ourselves to face that fear or that trauma and being able to work through it so that we can get
he
past
could have
it.
used that. I could have used that. All of us could have used that trauma as our mechanism to not, right?
He could have used it to, I'm never ever flying again. I'll never get in a plane again.
No one would blame him.
No.
Right. But he's like, no, that's not. I remember he said, when I'm up there, I'm free. I wanted to feel that again. And it's the same thing. It's like, we have a lot more power and control in this stuff than we let ourselves to believe.
So true.
Dreams, you can absolutely control. You are not just at free will.
Because that's part of your subconscious.
Absolutely.
And yes, the subconscious comes out and tries to control the conscious. But we are the person in charge.
Absolutely. So if we pretend and we feel in our lives that we're weak, that we're less than, that we are the trauma, then it will grow into this monster, right? But it's a hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
It's right now you're in the thick of things, and all you have to do is keep pushing it and keep seeing it. Maybe get to know it, challenge it.
Yeah.
Right?
And if one thing doesn't work, that doesn't mean you're a failure. That doesn't mean you're not good enough. Try something else.
Yeah.
Try something else. Sometimes it's just strengthening that muscle, and it's getting stronger and it's getting better.
Absolutely.
You can totally do this, Don.
I'm a firm believer that when we become very mindful of what it is, that I think we can become, we can become a lot stronger than we'll ever perceive ourselves to be.
Absolutely.
Most of the time for this kind of thing, it's our resistance to what is that causes most of our problems.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Help.
Well,
listeners.
I look at it. I remember, friends of mine and people, with birth and child delivery. And yes, I used drugs for that. So I can't fight through all this. But I know when they teach with like a doula or a midwife, they talk about being able to feel the pain. The second you resist the pain that's coming is when the pain gets worse. When we resist what is, everything is more difficult. When we try to control whatever it is in our own little bubble of how we think it should be is when things get harder. So it's learning to do what you can as you go, it's trying to, you don't need to always be swimming upriver, go with the current and do it safely.
I love that. It totally is. And I think that when we're going through rough times, if we don't realize what that resistance is, it can seem like it's us, it's our problem, not that it's something that's causing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And know, Dawn, that where you are right now is an absolute necessary step for what's coming next. We feel like we should avoid some of these experiences, but you got to realize that where you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be to get to that next step.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people forget that too. It's like, I don't want to be here, but it's necessary for where you're going, right?
Learn what you need to so that you can get better. When you know better, you do better.
And I think that sometimes, things will change sooner than you think. And sometimes we realize that we have these problems, we have these traumas. We think, well, they're here forever. It's never here forever. So I think it's pretty cool. I like the fact that, we are much stronger than we think we are. So just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Good job, Dawn. Thank you for reaching out. You can totally do this.
Awesome.
Oh, she said, thank you. And she's going to head out for a run now.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Think
right
about
after
what
this.
he's doing.
Yep.
think through that pain, you can do this. All right. We have
Listen to
here.
Shadrach's talk.
Yeah, go back and find that. And
it's on the
keep
live video.
listening for the podcast, and he'll be on in a few weeks. We're going to move Ro over.
Awesome.
She's got something to ask.
Cool. Let me drop this down so I can see.
Let's see if we can
That's a good
unmute
question.
her. Yeah. I used to be, dreams used to control me a lot.
Absolutely. Hey, Ro.
Hey, Ro.
Hi, how are you guys?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
It's like a bad dream, huh?
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Technical difficulties. Let's see.
You're not on mute on our end, so it must be
Yeah.
some sound. There. Try again.
Weird.
No.
It's not working.
How weird.
Sign language? No.
I'm just kidding.
It's great
Wow.
for the listener. That makes great
That's
podcasting,
I know.
huh? I love it.
I'm not muted.
No, I still can't hear you.
I wonder if
We
it's
can't-
a mic on her side. Like maybe her mic's not
Hello?
saying hold on. Like it's not on mute.
Yeah, it shows that you're not on mute on our side and your mic is on.
Yeah, I'm not on.
You've
Okay.
done this before.
Technical difficulties. It must be
Yeah.
the universe not wanting her to ask her question.
No,
Huh?
you can just go in the chat. If you can't get that mic to work, go in the chat and ask, and we can
Sounds good.
answer it for you.
Or get a big whiteboard. Huh.
Okay. Is it working now?
No.
That's interesting.
I saw that you went off. The mic went off, but no, it's still not on.
Weird.
Dang.
Shoot.
That sucks.
Maybe your employer knows that you're on lunch break and they're like,
No.
we can't have you.
I love
doing
having you on
therapy."
this. You have awesome insight and questions.
Yeah.
Just
I'll
type
go type it
fast.
to you.
Yeah. Okay. She said she'll type.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes technology gets the best of us. Oh,
Yeah. Let's see if we can get her back over to, or if she's just going to try to recharge it.
and just so
Recoming.
everyone knows, if you're watching this live, this will also be put out as a podcast tomorrow morning,
Mhm.
and so that you can go back and listen to it. And then also we've got our Addict to Athlete main podcast. We have an author this week who has
Yeah.
an amazing topic.
Monday. Oh my
Yep.
goodness. Author and entrepreneur,
Yep.
man in long-term recovery. And
Get this.
Wow.
His whole premise is something I've said for years. And when I heard his topic, I'm like, this is cool. That like the CEOs and business moguls,
yeah,
how to run your business like a recovering drug addict.
yeah. Or it's like, what
I'm
is
like,
it?
what?
Now I can't think of the name, but
It is the
addicts
cool-
make the best leaders.
Yeah, he does a TED talk. We'll post with it.
So
and it's
good.
true. We've talked about this, right?
It's just
You-
flipping that script.
You
of-
flip the script and you can do
you can be
anything.
an amazing addict. You change just a couple things in a
Yeah.
different way, and you can become amazing.
Yeah, he's even
in
going to
whatever
send
you
out a
wanna
couple
do.
of his
And he-
books for us to give away
Yeah,
too. So
entrepreneur.
yeah, we'll get you
Michael
guys
Brody Waite.
get you some of his
I think
books.
you guys will really enjoy him.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have a few more that are in the chamber that I'm excited to
Yeah.
get.
And Monday's podcast, Corey Harrington. It's called The Intentional Walk.
Mhm.
A baseball player in the minor league,
Yep.
turned addict, turned Ironman.
Yeah,
And oh my goodness, his
we should ask
story.
Corey what the average cost is, right?
Yeah, he's done.
Yeah. But see, that the difference between what he's doing is that there's, and like what Seven does and some of those, they go to
Mhm.
compete and they have fun,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't become
It's
this,
something that's a
Yeah.
hobby, and it's something on.
I think if we step
And
out of
again,
that
if you
light-
can do it and you have the time and the ability and the money, go for it.
Yeah.
Something you want to do. But when it starts to become a one-upping yourself,
yeah,
I don't know.
it'll never work that way.
Yeah.
I
Somebody
don't
will
know.
always win. Somebody will always beat you at some point.
Yeah.
You know.
So real quick, too, we had a great experience
Oh,
yesterday.
here's row back. Let me try
Oh.
it one more time.
Okay,
And then if not, you can share your experience.
I'll do that anyway, right?
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
That's cool. Let's see if they paid their internet bill now since last time
Yeah,
we
the
spoke to
clinic
Ro.
where she works.
That's awesome. All right, our
Is it working
mic's
now?
on. Let's see. Ro,
We get you there, Ro.
Are you still? Is it working?
I see it's going.
It's
but
lighting up
not-
like you're talking, but we
Yeah.
cannot
Yeah.
hear you.
I'm talking. Everything's fine on my
Really
end.
strange.
Darn it.
I'm trying to type it.
Yeah, maybe just try typing it in the chat.
Yeah. Sorry, Ro. I don't know. So yesterday we were able to participate in the rural community, the official name.
It's the Opiate Summit for Rural Communities in, well, Utah mainly, but it was open nationwide, and there were a lot of attendees and presenters from outside of the state of Utah, and just how we help address the opiate epidemic and substance misuse and treatment for those rural communities where it's just harder to have resources and have connections.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of our Uinta County athletes out there, Uinta Basin athletes out there. Flo was on there.
Yeah.
I love seeing her.
Flo Grant.
And yeah, hoping to get a chapter of Addict to Athlete to the Ute tribe.
Yes, we would love to do that.
And again, I'm going to stress the fact that you Patreon folks are helping us do that as we apply for grants and get denied over and over. Your participation in the Patreon helps.
It means even more to us because thank you.
Because then we can use that to help sponsor people for the training and whatnot too. And the more Patreon subscribers we get, the better we'll be able to help communities out there. So it was kind of interesting, and I'll get very real with all of our listeners that we put in for a grant just recently to help rural communities and establish, some help to rural communities. And we thought,
how can we get more resources out there where
they need it?
They need more.
And
help.
Since Addict to Athletes growth chapter and development and some of the things that we do fits into that model so well, we spent quite a few hours putting together a grant.
And we already currently have 5 chapters in rural areas of Utah. Mm-hmm. And I think the other outside states are all in rural areas, I believe, too, in our 3 states out of Utah.
Yeah, they are. They're pretty much all rural. Yeah. In fact, one of our biggest population that we should have here in Salt Lake Valley has been actually small and whatnot. And now that we've just got that one reestablished, I'm excited to see what that's going to bring with Coach Linda. But we didn't get that grant. And it's interesting because I'm like, that doesn't, I guess, I frustrate what we're doing because we're still going to push Team Addict to Athlete out there. Mm-hmm. It'll just
maybe take a little longer.
Be a little more creative on how we're doing it.
We need the funds to do it. Yeah. So if you want Addict to Athlete in your community, in your area, please, we've got a training you can pay for, donations. There's ways you can help support our team to be able to help us reach further.
Get that out there because it's interesting too, because I'm thinking, we were a little bit like bugged that we didn't get it, obviously, because we know what we can do and we've seen how this helps.
We worked so hard, and I had multiple people help me with this grant that said it is phenomenal.
But the other side of that coin is that means that our team's supposed to be growing this way for now. And, our volunteers, I cannot thank all of you enough. Watching the Uinta Basin guys and gals jump out of those planes.
Our coach, the team captains out there, and even the participants, like everything you guys do, we're so grateful for.
Yep. Watching Jonah and those guys run the Dino half.
Yeah. With Emma.
Yeah.
I pushed Emma.
I didn't realize. I was wondering, I have to ask Jonah if he purchased that Addict to Athlete shirt because of Dino half, or was it just a coincidence? He's got this Kelly
green and it's so beautiful.
There's not too many of those.
No.
Yeah. But he was rocking that. And I'm like, man, you look the theme.
He looks awesome.
And we're hoping to get Jonah here soon trained to take that out to the Ute tribe. But we couldn't do it without you guys through the Patreon, through your volunteerism, through your willingness to share these podcasts, to review them. It's a big deal. It helps a lot. Yeah. And so really it's the team that makes, the stuff work. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Talking about Team Addict to Athlete yesterday to all these people that hadn't heard about it yet, a lot of them from out of state, they were blown away by our presentation and for what you all have helped create. And it's funny because we look so big on paper because we've been around now for 10 years. But really we're still this humble little group, which is kind of funny, and so I love the fact that when they ask how we've grown so big, it's 110% off of the volunteers that you guys have done. So
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
All right.
Keep you posted.
Rose's question here. She says, back to the trauma depression balance. As a kid, I always saw my mom in her not so right state of mind. Oh, shoot, I slid past that. I promised myself as a mom I would never be that person. Sadly, I did go that route, but have since broke the cycle. But I think that I overdo so much and I try to do it all. I can't seem to find my balance from burning out. The different thing at this time around is being the support for my boys, but also being there for my family. And I do it because my boys see the wall that all that I do and know I don't give up. But I don't know what I've done before to get out of this familiar burned out feeling. How do I find that balance between family, work, and school?
Yeah. Ro, that's a great question. And it's interesting because it almost slides into a question that we had that I picked up today for the conversation about motivation. Similarly, this question asked, I stopped using about 5 years ago. No, I stopped using a long time ago. I stopped running about 5 years ago because my schedule got so overwhelming. I thought that I could invest more time in my job and get back to running, quote, when I had more time. And we all know where that story goes. It says, now that I have some time back on my hands, I have zero motivation. How do I motivate myself to get back to what makes me feel better? It's the same concept. It's like, okay, now how do I avoid the burnout, right? First and foremost, let's get back to what you need as a mom and as just your own person. Marissa said this a long time ago too, and it was kind of interesting, is give yourself some kind of reward, and reward yourself. That's hard to do when you're a mom and when you're in a situation where you feel like you don't have much, you give more than you take.
Yeah.
Rethink positive thinking, which is kind of funny. And I think that's kind of an interesting, what I mean by that is we get down on ourselves so easy because of all the shortcomings that we believe we have. Ro, you're light years away from the way you were raised, much the same way I was, right?
And I think maybe we've talked about this with her. I know some of why she does what she does is kind of an overcompensating to
which I do.
Yes.
You've seen
overprove that you're a good mom, overprove that you know how to work and provide for your family because you didn't receive that as a child. But I think there's other parts of it too, where it's trying to distract yourself maybe from some other things by just doing.
Yeah.
As type of an addiction, let me just overwork, that workaholic maybe mentality of let me do. And then I won't think about the emotional stuff that's going on inside because I'm distracted by it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's the thing too, is
things it could be.
She's a lot like me too, where there's this overcompensation too about doing too much, and so like I say, rethink positive thinking. Sometimes we have to put ourselves as the priority. And we don't do that very often. Most of the time when we ask someone to give me their priority list, they're way down on there. It starts with their children and then maybe their job. And then me, I'm on that list somewhere, but it's usually further down the line.
Yeah.
You take an evaluation and maybe like a litmus test, if you will, about where you are literally, not emotionally. You are a mother to your children. They know they're loved, as evidenced by I've seen them. Yeah. I've seen the way that they talk to you. I see the way they interact with people. I see how much care there is there. I see, even though they've struggled with their own problems, they come to you with those problems.
They talk to you. They talk to you. Struggle.
Yeah. And so those feelings of inadequacy are because you're comparing yourself to this ideal that doesn't exist. You're light years from the person that raised you. And I know that too, but it happens to me as well. And I overcompensate.
Yeah.
And there's things I know I do where I'm like, okay, I know that I shouldn't be sneaking a granola bar into, the kids because they refuse to eat dinner. But me, I'm like, I know how it feels. And it's got me in trouble too.
Yeah. Because you know what it felt like to go to bed hungry.
But then the kids come to me with things that they need to be coming to both of us for. And that parent splitting is a very real thing.
Yeah. They know that they can get
the unfortunate and fortunate thing that Ro has for her is that it really is just her.
Yeah.
And so she gets both sides of that. And so you're taking on a monumental task of being
mother and father.
And so, usually in a relationship, you can have someone take off the heat when necessary. You don't have that.
You haven't had it.
And because you didn't have it growing up, now you really have it. You're like the Iron Giant, right? I would say, lessen the expectations you have for yourself. At the same time, keeping the characteristics that's made you an amazing mother. Your investment with your kids, you're doing the best you can, and the best you can is better than you ever got. And then I would say join the team, right?
Yeah.
Talk to some of the moms here. Get on the women's group.
From what I understand too, a lot of perfectionists have, which I believe you are, put perfectionism out on everyone else. And one thing that I really love about you and what I've seen in your mothering is that you don't do that to your kids.
I've noticed
and
that.
I think that's a huge
and that's not
bonus.
easy to do.
No, it's not, because you get into that point that I know what you know. I know that you know better, and you should do better, and you should be better, and I've taught you better. I do that.
Yeah.
But I don't think you've done that. But I really think you hold yourself at a standard that is unrealistic. So I think it is a plus that you don't do that to your kids, that you really just love them no matter what. And I think you need to turn that to yourself.
That rewarding yourself.
Yeah. You've got to love yourself no matter what.
I'm glad you say that, because I can kind of understand where she's coming from with that too, because she doesn't expect that from her children. She doubles down on herself.
Yeah.
And then she expects herself to be the best of the best, when it's like she runs circles around all of us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I can totally see that with her. And so the outside, the people that are looking at your mothering or at you as a family, we're in awe. And I'm not just saying that to try to make you feel warm and fuzzy. I'm dead serious, because it's like we see what you're doing. So to you, it seems like you're not doing enough, but to everybody else, it's like, wow. And for those that really know you, they get it.
They know
for sure. It's a hard one.
Yeah. Love yourself. You've got to be more patient and compassionate
The
with
other thing
yourself.
is, Rose very aware. She's not
she's
in the dark. And I love that she comes on and does this, because if Rose feeling this way, there's other single moms and parents who are feeling this way.
Absolutely.
But I love the fact that she's this aware. Like, she knows.
And when you open
from.
up and share these things, and we can talk to you about it and through it, the people that listen and I'm sure I'm going to thank you for them, because I know that they're thanking you for opening up like this.
Absolutely. You're a rock star. Athletes, viewers, listeners, thank you so much for participating today on One with Coach Blu. We come here every week, same time. Maybe we should do a little better at promoting this, but it comes up on us pretty fast.
Yeah. And my schedule's changing for summer, so we're trying to decide if we need to change it again.
You might just get Blu here, the lone man behind the mic.
That's kind of boring now.
Really?
What?
I'm just kidding.
I just barely started doing this. I can act like I'm part, right?
You are part, absolutely. In fact, we should probably change the name. But no, thank you guys for jumping on. Again, thank you, Patreon subscribers. If you'd like to become a Patreon subscriber, it's patreon.com/addicttoathlete. See what we've got there. Our online store, our 10-year anniversary shirt is going to be leaving the store soon.
Yes.
That's an exclusive offer. It's only going to be this one-time deal. It's a cool logo, and I feel sad that we're going to lose it. But get on addicttoathlete.org. You'll find a little tab there for our online store. It's through the extracurricular recovery.
It's a fantastic logo.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be there long. We also have a new one that will be coming out for the 4th of July.
Patriotic shirt. It's really cool.
So please check our store. We've got some amazing stuff.
Yep, absolutely. All the proceeds go to help Addict to Athletes nonprofit status move forward, help these podcasts reach further lengths, and to help turn the mess into the message. And so athletes, until next time, please do so. See what this week you can erase and see what you replace it with. Post about it. Let us see your journey, because then it helps us turn the mess into the message.